Welcome to Have I Got News for You? I'm Gabby Logan. In the news this week, at Britain's largest container crane in Tilbury, the operator has just been told to expect a visit from Rachel Reeves. In Bristol, one man describes his experience of going dogging for the first time.
It's raw, it's enjoyable, it's thrilling.
And following the Panorama controversy, the BBC confirm they've checked that all footage of Donald Trump used in this show has been edited fairly.
I love watching.
Have I got good news for you? It's incredible.
What a show it continues to be.
On Ian's team tonight is a presenter on Channel 4 News who says she met her husband in Oxford when they shared a punt. I assume they were on the river, not in Ladbrokes, placing an accumulator on the Grand National. Please welcome Cathy Newman. On Paul's team tonight is a comedian who makes no bones about his contempt for Donald Trump. Please welcome the new editor of Panorama, Nish, Kumar. So we begin with the bigger news stories of the week. Ian and Cathy, here's yours.
That's the previous Prime Minister.
That's him racking up some more air miles.
Yes. Oh, and that's next week's Prime Minister. This is the Labour Party having a civil war. They've imitated most of the previous government's antics, so they thought, why not have a civil war?
But also, isn't Keir Starmer with kids telling them that not to listen to the voices in their head telling them that they're no good?
Yeah, but the voices in his head are coming from outside.
Yeah. It is the government descending into further chaos.
Yes.
A recent YouGov poll does seem to indicate the public aren't happy. 45% of Labour voters want Keir out before the next election. 30% think the last Conservative government was more competent than this one. 40% think Rishi Sunak was a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer.
Oh, that's tough. That really is.
On polls and surveys, who or what do 44% of people trust more than anyone, including their family?
God?
Close. AI.
Oh, that's just tragic.
There was a whole bunch of people turned up at Buckingham Palace expecting to find a Christmas fair because it'd been advertised via AI.
Really?
Yeah, it was on the news earlier. It's one of those things I watch before the show.
AI is extraordinarily unreliable. And the head of Google said this week, don't trust AI. And you think, you put it out there.
Like, my job is just standing around being an idiot. And if I can't do that without computer assistance, then I've got real problems, man. AI keeps describing me as a successful comedian, so you know it's a bag of shit.
OK, back to Labour's week, though, and
Yes.
a band of 80 rebel MPs are said to be lining up any number of useless potential challenges to Keir Starmer. What's the word that Labour used to use to describe this sort of thing when it was happening to the Tories when they were in power?
Psychodrama.
Ian's on the money. Should we have a look?
Nobody wants this to be part of a psychodrama in the Conservative Party.
The whole Brexit thing seems to me to be some sort of Tory psychodrama.
We're seeing a psychodrama within the Conservative Party.
The latest chapter in the Conservative Party's psychodrama.
The latest instalment in a Tory psychodrama.
We're all stuck in their psychodrama.
Typical Keir, he gives it a different intonation. I think they and the public and everybody else has just forgotten that normally you have a Prime Minister for a set number of years. Nowadays, someone's been in for about a couple of months and we think, boring, let's have another Prime Minister. Who else?
Swipe left.
Swipe right, usually.
Well, this is quite good for me because my husband knows I don't use dating apps. West Streeting was elevated to the top of the pile of challengers by a cat-handed briefing operation.
A group of MPs were asked in 2018, who do you think will be Prime Minister in 10 years? And they all said, oh, it could be, you know, this person, this person. West Streeting said, me.
Cathy, he's always been known for his ambition, has he?
Most politicians, you think, oh, God, here comes a soundbite again. But with Wes Streeting, he actually looks like he's answering it quite naturally. So he has got that skill. You know, you were talking about Keir Starmer the other day. Well, not the other day, I mean just now.
It's been a very long recording. The BBC has edited those two bits together.
You talk about Keir Starmer. Starmer sort of delivering this very sort of deadpan. You know, Wes can deliver his lines like he's just thought of it.
Yeah.
Isn't the problem for Starmer that he set himself up as somebody who gets stuff done, and he kept saying, our mission is delivery, 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 and now they've got into government, they're not delivering anything. It's like you've ordered a package from Yodel, and 3 days later you've got a photo sent through that says, we've delivered your package, and it turns out they've kicked it into a bin, and it's not even your bin.
Well, Wes Streeting is very good at delivering a message robotically. Let's have a look.
Wes Streeting, are you a faithful or are you a traitor?
I'm a faithful. In fact, what you've seen from a silly number 10 source overnight is probably the worst attack on a faithful since Joe Marler was banished in the Traitors final. I think whoever's been briefing this has been watching too much Celebrity Traitors, and this is just about the worst attack on a faithful I've seen since Joe Marler was kicked out and banished in the final. Too much Celebrity Traitors, and this is just about the most appalling attack on a faithful I've seen since Joe Marler was banished in the final. The most unwarranted attack on a faithful since Joe Marler was banished in the Traitors final. The most unjustified attack on a faithful since Joe Marler was banished in the final. The most unjustified attack on a faithful since Joe Marler was banished.
I think if you paid for a good joke, you've got to keep using it, right? And somebody's written that for him. And
that feels like a dig at me, Gabby. That is the most unjustified attack on a faithful since Joe Marler.
Well, Ed Miliband won't be leader. He's very popular, though, isn't he? He's really cracked social media. He's done a TikTok joke for young people, but I'm going to share it with you guys.
Our new nuclear technology that can create good jobs across Britain. We're building the first fleet of SMRs in North Wales, creating 3,000 jobs. Clean, homegrown power for energy security, jobs, and to tackle the climate crisis.
Ed, this is an SMR video, not an ASMR video.
That is that whispery thing that's all the rage on TikTok, or was about 6 months ago, which is why Ed Miliband suddenly picked up on it.
Paul, did that come
Sorry, what? Sorry, I was in a light coma, sorry. My eyes were open, but I wasn't listening.
Did it cut across your algorithm?
I had no idea what he was talking about.
What does ASMR stand for?
A sexy man reading.
Did you get? What about Shabana Mahmood? She has introduced her Get Tough on immigration policies. What are the core planks?
She did a small boats policy, which some of her critics have said is basically a reprisal of the hostile environment, which means that you deport people, particularly Albanians. She's picked a fight with Edi Rama, who's the Albanian Prime Minister, who I would say it's quite brave to pick a fight with him because he is a giant and she's not. So,
that's decided on a straight physical fight.
Do you remember when he met Giorgia Meloni and he practically sort of picked her up?
No.
Then we've got that picture now.
Ah, there you go.
God. You're right, he is quite big.
Never have high heel shoes been more redundant.
The other plank of the policy is about migration more generally, and with that, you might have to wait 20 or even 30 years to be given indefinite leave to remain. So it is an incredibly tough policy.
Listen, I got a dog in this fight. I don't want to be deported. I'm sorry to say, I think that this plan is insane. And I also, all we ever talk about in this country is immigration. It's all we ever talk about. And meanwhile, we've got people paying too much money in the bills, the climate crisis. I think we now have to reframe everything through the prism of immigration. So you're like, OK, 3 of the big 5 energy companies are owned by foreign owners. So that's asylum heaters. That's what we're going to call them now. And instead of the climate crisis, we're going to call it climate immigration and say hot foreign weather is coming over here, ruining our country. Some of it's Sharia weather. That's the only way we're going to get anything done in this country.
Is that the right answer?
I think you've kind of nudged us towards these policies are clearly an attempt to head off reform. GB News presenter Martin Daubney presented some research based on the defendants in sex offences at 9 Crown courts over a 6-week period, counting the non-British sounding surnames. And bear in mind, this is a show normally presented by Nigel Farage.
When I first met him, I said, how do you pronounce your second name? And he said, what do you put your car in? And I said, well, I put my car in a garage. So I think he's Nigel Farage.
Well, it could be Nigel Multi-Storey Car Park.
Staying with GB News, would you like to see from earlier this week the Conservative leadership hopeful Robert Jenrick's appearance backed by some of his most loyal supporters?
Yes.
Well, look, the High Street is in a real mess at the moment. What we've said as Conservatives is that we want to get rid of business rates for businesses with rateable values of £100,000 or less.
I mean, the producers at GB News must be... I mean, they're not supporters of him, are they? They're trying to, you know, they wouldn't have allowed that to happen if they'd...
What reason did the Treasury give for Rachel Reeves' rather remarkable U-turn on raising the basic rate of income tax this week?
They've more money than they thought they had.
Kind of, yeah. The Chancellor had received an OBR forecast for increased tax receipts, which suggests her black hole is not quite as big as she thought it was, maybe just 20 billion. Not 30 billion.
Yeah, she marched all her backbenchers up the hill, you know, the grand old Duke of York, got them all
don't
ready.
mention the Duke of York.
Lawyers will never let that one on.
Yeah, this is the news that half of Labour voters want Keir Starmer gone before the next election. Some Labour insiders fear that if the government continues to tear itself apart, Reform will come to power and deliver an extreme right-wing immigration policy. Well, I think that ship has sailed, docked, and all the passengers stripped of their jewellery. Hang on, didn't Gary Lineker get sacked for that kind of thing? It's also been reported that Angela Rayner came very close to appearing on this year's I'm a Celebrity. Apparently, she was very tempted by the idea she could claim the camp as her primary residence. Paul and Nish, here's yours.
Yeah. Donald T. Rump. This is the Panorama special that was anything but, leading to the Director General of Director General of the BBC having to resign because of a clumsy edit. The thing is, though, they have to prove that Panorama was seen in America, which it wasn't. Yeah. They have to prove that it affected his reputation. He won the election, so it didn't.
He did say some pretty inflammatory things that day.
Yeah, of course.
Just not in the order that the BBC put it.
There was a mistake in the edit, and, you know, they shouldn't have done it.
A really bad mistake.
Yeah, a really terrible mistake, and I was amazed anyone at the BBC did it. I'm amazed. No one I've ever worked with would have done that. It's absolutely basic level 1 screw-up. And they should have apologised immediately, which they didn't. But they have apologised now, and the only course for them is to say, you have no reputation to defend.
But then nobody complained at the time.
No, well, maybe nobody in any country watched it.
Yeah.
The truth is, it's whether he was inciting people before the riot or was he using the words fight, fight while people were fighting. Strikes me as a thin defence, but don't trust me. My expertise in libel actions is well known.
He's got a season ticket. You've got a season ticket.
I'm amazed I haven't been called in to give advice, but...
You got one of those coffee cards. You get your next libel action for free, don't you, Ian?
He said, I don't accept your apology. I want between £1 and £5 billion.
We'll give him £2. £2.
The problem with him is that people say he's got no case to answer, he has no reputation to defend. These would normally be defences, even in America, where traditionally it's harder to win a libel action, but this is Trump. So if he loses in a Florida court, he will appeal, and then it'll go up, and it'll go up to the Supreme Court, which he has packed with people who agree with him. So it's perfectly possible for him to lose the case, to have no case at any point, and win.
And if that doesn't work, he's taking it right to the top. Judge Judy. He doesn't want the case to happen here because damages in British courts rarely exceed £100,000, which could be why he...
They do sometimes.
Who's been accused of masterminding a coup at the BBC?
You?
No.
Somebody on the BBC Board of Governors?
Mm-hmm.
Robbie Gibb.
Yes. Not a BG, everybody. Surprise. He was appointed by Boris Johnson as a non-exec on the BBC Board of Governors. And The Observer claims Gibb has a long-running concern about rooting out left-leaning bias at the BBC, allegedly telling colleagues 18 months ago, if I don't get my way, I'll blow the place up.
Which he has. And, of course, Boris Johnson has been very, very upset about the sort of behaviour around senior executives at the BBC.
When Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, my dad described him as being Indian standard in his corruption. The highest compliment you can give somebody. Listen, Tim Davie, it was obviously the DG at the BBC, and there was a report in The Sun that he had cancelled a show that I used to host called The Mash Report on BBC Two as part of a kind of war on wokeness. And I will say, I was not happy to read that in The Sun, but the headline was Nish, Mash, Bosh. Even I don't think he should have been sacked, and I don't like him.
So Trump spent time this week with someone he feels more comfortable around. Who was that?
MBS.
Mohammed bin Salman.
Shall we see how they handled being faced with the thorny issue of murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi?
Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it. And we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
This is a man suing another organisation for a failure of journalism.
And did you notice how MBS was sort of studying his hand, like, you know, sort of in a sort of Macbeth-type style?
At a later point in the interview, Mohammed bin Salman actually says, all right, I'll answer this question. Even he is embarrassed at Trump's attempt to whitewash him.
Like, he got chopped up with a bone saw and put in a bin. I don't think that's covered by the phrase, things happen.
Things took a turn for the weird. Let's have a look at Trump's obsession with bin Salman.
Oh, yeah. And Trump doesn't give a fist pump. I grabbed that hand. I don't give a hell where that hand's been. I grabbed that
It's the second time I felt sorry for Mohammed bin Salman, and the other was when I found out Jimmy Carr did the Saudi Arabian Comedy Festival. I thought...
Trump spent time this week with someone he feels more... I've just done that.
You can't do a replay, Gabby. This isn't Match of the Day.
How did Trump further demonstrate his disrespect for journalists on Air Force One this week?
Yeah, he called a female journalist Piggy.
Quiet Piggy.
Quiet Piggy, yes. Yeah.
Shall we have a look?
Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead. Go ahead.
The file, Venezuela, sir.
Quiet, Piggy.
What went through his head at that point?
Do you know the journalist? She's a Bloomberg journalist, Catherine Lucy. She's the one that he called Piggy. There she is. I can't see the piggy. Ah, there it is. What surprise turn did Trump take this week?
They're releasing the Epstein files after months of saying, no, it's all a hoax, don't release them. He then realised there was a huge backlash within the Republican Party that they were going to vote for it. So he said, oh, yeah, vote for it, after they all said they were going to.
It's completely split MAGA, hasn't it? For the first time, there's a sort of chasm in MAGA, which is, you know, potentially has long-lasting worries for Trump.
So there's two separate groups of lunatics.
Yeah. There's Ma and Gar.
And then the older ones who are gaga.
Well, the Democrats have already released over 20,000 pages of new documents related to Epstein. What particularly caught people's eye this week?
It wasn't the Clinton thing.
It was that.
We're going to talk about that?
Well...
There is a theory going around on the internet that there is a bit in the Epstein files where there is a reference to Donald Trump performing oral sex on a person referred to as Bubba. Now, Bubba is a quite common nickname for Bill Clinton. And all I will say on this issue is, if there's one thing we know Bill Clinton likes...
Surely this was a joke. I mean, because these are...
Yeah, this was from Epstein's brother to Epstein. It was a joke between brothers.
Yeah.
The email from Epstein's brother suggests that Jeffrey should find out if Putin has the photos of Trump blowing Bubba. West Ham fans are forever blowing Bubba.
Is that a football reference?
West Ham, yeah.
West Ham.
West Ham.
Is that what they sing?
I'm forever blowing bubbles.
Bubbles,
Which was
yeah.
Michael Jackson's chimpanzee.
Can I just say, Bill Clinton... Someone once dared me to get a box of peppermints signed by him. So I went up to him, and he was surrounded by men, and he kind of hauled me in because I was the only woman there, and signed the peppermints.
Why peppermints?
Well, I don't know. Suck it and see? I don't know.
Oh, OK.
I wasn't expecting that.
Was it the mince with the hole in the middle?
This is the dispute between Trump and the BBC, with Trump still demanding up to $5 billion in damages. Since the row over the Trump edit, Rachel Reeves has now complained to the BBC that on numerous occasions they have broadcast her speeches unedited and in full. The BBC has promised never to broadcast the edition of Panorama on any platform ever again. And the master tape has been placed in what is now known as the top of the pops cupboard. Jeffrey Epstein's emails seem to implicate Trump, with one saying, of course he knew about the girls. In fairness to Trump, a lot of what Epstein wrote wasn't true, like his suicide note. So, at the end of that round, it's 2 points to Ian and Cathy and 2 points to Paul and Nish. We're neck and neck. And so to round 2, the jigsaw of views, fingers on buzzers, teams.
It's about TikTok.
Yes. I knew you'd be the TikTok man.
Yeah. 2 things I know about sport TikTok. Someone did something about football on some device.
It's Sky, isn't it? They produced an outlet for women to be interested in athletics and sport. Either it was a product of men or it was AI, because I mean, it was so bad.
This is the news that Sky Sports have scrapped their female-focused TikTok channel after just 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it was called Halo. And what was wrong with the TikTok channel?
Well, it was pink, and it was sort of like, it was very sort of, you know, it was quite insulting and patronising.
Yeah, wearing pink.
I know, do you think my suit? It was intended to be the little sis of Sky Sports, but immediately faced criticism from users for being unbelievably sexist. One video about Manchester City's men's striker Erling Haaland scoring a goal had this caption: "How the matcha plus hot girl walk combo hits."
See, that's got to be artificial intelligence, because it makes no fucking sense at all.
In other sports news, what have the Scotland men's football team done this week?
They qualified for the World Cup.
For the first time in 28 years?
Yeah. What about that last goal, eh, Ian?
Yeah, eh?
Eh?
Describe the intricate passing move that led to the last goal.
There was a matcha and a hot girl.
I desperately want this to be a job swap for this week, and for you to host this and for you to host Match of the Day. Because at one point over the course of that conversation, you just said someone did something about football. I think that would be an incredible energy to bring to the Saturday Night Highlights package.
We've got another match, Ian. Another one! Another one! You can't go yet, there are 8 more.
Our Royal Engineers playing.
Well, BBC Scotland commentator Alistair Lamont got very excited. Let's have a listen.
Surely now Scotland will hold on to possession. It's McLean. He's looking to go for goal from the halfway line. It's chipped straight. Glorious! Glorious!
So basically what happened was, in the last minute, one Scottish player got the ball in his own half, looks up, saw the goalkeeper was way out, and from the halfway line kicked it right over the goalkeeper's head into the goal. But the Scottish commentators on the TV coverage, all sort of thoughts of sort of neutrality went out the window. Because as he got the ball, one was going, shoot! Shoot! Shoot!
Anybody here remember what happened at the last Rugby World Cup in France a few years ago? Let's have a little look.
What do you want to say to World Rugby?
I want to say World Rugby. I've been on the lash for 5 weeks, like, you know. I started to be a wee golf tournament down in Villamura, and that was magic, right? And then I jumped over to Marseille, and I couldn't believe it when I got there because they were filling us full of the old bevy, you know what I mean? And we just went on the lash for 4 weeks. Went up through the Chablis, down the wine cellars, had a brilliant time, a brilliant time.
So what you're saying is you're not too bothered, like, if Scotland fans...
Win, lose or draw, I'm getting pitched. Win, lose or draw, I'm getting blue-turned. I'm getting blue-turned, big.
Yeah. This is the disastrous Sky Sports TikTok channel for women called Halo, or more accurately, Goodbye. The man behind the channel has issued a sincere apology to all female sports fans, telling them, don't worry your pretty little heads about it. You can understand the thinking behind the channel, as there's a huge gulf between men's and women's sports, not least in football, where we're still a way off the England men's team winning 2 consecutive Euro finals. Yes, thank you. Fingers on buzzers, teams.
COVID inquiry, reporting on Thursday. Who would have thought that a man who can't control his own hair ran a chaotic government during a time of national emergency?
He missed all those Cobra meetings because he said he was finishing his Shakespeare book, and you think, that better be one really good book.
They were also pretty savage about Dominic Cummings as well. They said he had a destabilising influence. He was spread poison throughout number 10.
I'm glad we had an inquiry, because I just wouldn't have known. I mean, Dominic Cummings. I thought he was just a guy who had an unfortunate eyesight problem.
There were a few destabilising influences in number 10, though.
Looks like some of those people are really drunk.
Inquiry Chair Baroness Hallett said the UK's response was too little, too late, and she said that had the government introduced measures earlier than mid-March, the mandatory lockdown might not have been necessary at all.
But the Permanent Secretary at the Health Department at the time, Chris Wormald, who is now Cabinet Secretary, has also been heavily criticised.
You saying the same person who was there when it was chaotic and hopeless is there now in this current period of stability? And this inquiry's fantastic.
Well, it's not the worst thing said about a member of Boris's government. What criticism did Matt Hancock once get on Radio 2?
Is this from his wife?
It's a clip which has resurfaced this week from 2022 when a caller dedicated a song to Hancock on Radio 2. Let's have a listen.
What track are we playing and why, please?
We're playing Don't Stop Me Now by Queen because Matt Hancock's a
OK, so we've got to put him off there. This is live radio. This kind of thing happened. I can only apologise.
Wow.
And you're saying that was his wife?
On the subject of something people couldn't do during COVID, what did scientists discover this week?
Kissing.
True.
Yeah.
This is true. What did they actually...
It goes back a long way to at least 1948. There is no sort of biological or evolutionary reason for kissing that they can work out, but it's been going on. Animals kiss, human beings kiss, as we know, and it goes back to the very beginnings of civilization.
Animals kiss?
Monkeys.
OK, but not fish or, you know...
Monkeys don't kiss fish, no.
I just want a bit more evidence for animals.
I mean, they'll look and they'll think about it, but in the end, it's probably not worth it. You know, they're in water, they're slippery.
You got any other animals kissing stories?
There's this parrot walks into a brothel.
You're on the right story.
What, the parrot walks into a brothel?
New research suggests that Neanderthals kissed each other. Of course they did. How do you think Noel and Liam made up? Neanderthals are now thought to have regularly kissed, but only after they've been on a date. Maybe they went clubbing. Time now for the missing words round. And we're going to start with, if you want what, it'll take 103 years.
Tax cuts.
Is it a dental appointment?
If you want your pothole filled in Oxfordshire,
yes,
it'll take 103 years. According to The Sun, resident Diane Hart, 76, said, we won't have a road in 103 years. No offence, Diane, but I'm not sure that's anything you need to worry about. Next, car maker claims its new what could be the future of motoring.
Is it bicycle?
It's got to be driverless car.
Driving robot driver.
Car maker claims its new square steering wheel could be the future of motoring. This is Peugeot's futuristic new square steering wheel. Here it is. And if you don't like it as a steering wheel, you could do Yorkshires in that. Next up, a woman who threw message in a bottle into sea to find romantic connection. What?
Marries Welk.
Victim of catfishing.
Woman who threw message in a bottle into sea to find romantic connection gets reply saying, please stop throwing rubbish in the sea. And here is Lorraine Forbes with her bottle. Well, Lorraine has sent many messages looking for love in plastic bottles, one of which literally took its recipient's breath away when it got wedged in a dolphin's blowhole. Finally, what only had one what?
Hitler.
Scientists.
It's true.
Yeah.
And Himmler had something similar, as the song used to go. Hitler only had one ball, say scientists. It's true, the song was true.
Absolutely bang on.
Yeah, true.
Bang on. Yep.
They studied his DNA, didn't they?
Yep.
Wait, is the other in the Albert Hall?
Many world leaders have had their genitalia subject to public scrutiny. Hitler is said to have suffered from an undescended testicle, whereas Donald Trump has two fully descended testicles, Eric and Donald Jr. So the final scores are Ian and Cathy have 3 points. Paul and Nish have 6 points. Now, before we go, there's just time for the caption competition.
It's her own fault. I told Deirdre to wear her thermals.
He's giving me the cold shoulder.
I don't know what he's smiling about. His carrot fell off 10 minutes ago.
On which note, we say thank you to our panellists, Ian Hislop and Cathy Newman, Paul Merton and Nish Kumar, and I leave you with the news that on a visit to his GP, one man digests the news that you can't get charisma on the NHS. At a high-powered electrical substation in London, one woman approaches an engineer to ask if there are any free sockets to put her fingers in. And in Soho, Gordon Ramsay denies mistreating his cat after it devours a £3,000 truffle. Good night.
It's the news we've all been waiting for. Line of Duty will be back. Revisit all the AC12 antics on iPlayer. As a much-loved comedy returns next on BBC One. A new baby in tow, Amy Lou Wood has even more daddy issues.